Well, hello. This is Jonathan Sheely from Sheely Executive Consulting. And today I have a conversation with Mike Panella from Swimming Pool Services in Waukesha, Pewaukee, Waukesha, whichever one it is, serves both cities. I have a funny story. I bumped into Mike through LinkedIn and then realized that we attended the same church after we had coffee at Starbucks, or not at Starbucks, at Stone Creek, better coffee spot, which was kind of fun because, networking is kind of challenging in the first place. And then what happened was we actually had a better connection than just being in the same geographic location. We had a shared church experience. But anyway, that's completely for free. Mike has been with Swimming Pool Services since what, 2011, 2012?
11.
And the company's been around far longer than that, in the 60s, right?
Mhm.
And so he has been through leadership transition in the company. He's been around for changes in the industry and changes in the economy. And obviously, we're in lake country where there are lots of different kinds of people with different needs for their pools, for long seasons for hot tubs, short seasons for in-ground pools. I mean, it's just a completely different environment than maybe some other companies would have in a more traditional, like southern state with long services for, or long seasons for their pools. But Mike has been around the block as a business leader, and we're going to talk about culture today. And I'm really fascinated by some of the things that they have done at Swimming Pool Services. And so let's dive in. Mike, why don't you, in your words, tell me a little bit about how you got to be the CEO of the company?
I'd love to. So I started with Swimming Pool Services in 2011, and it was at a time in my life where I was 21 years old. I had no real ambition. I had actually been fired from my previous couple jobs, and I just kind of felt hopeless and didn't had no idea what I was going to do with my life, and didn't really aspire to much. But I knew I liked working with people, and so when I applied for the job here, it was actually for like an office position that I applied for and interviewed for originally. And I did well enough in that interview where they said, "Yeah, okay, we don't want to put you back in an office, but we'd love to get you in our retail store, interacting with our clients face to face." So I was like, "Yeah, I love it. I grew up with a swimming pool. Don't know anything else about them, but it sounds like fun." So, like pretty much everybody in this industry, I got here by accident, and so I worked in our store as a retail associate for a couple of years, and then after that, I was eventually elevated to a role as retail manager, which is actually where I've served probably the most time in my career here thus far. I was retail manager for about 8 years, and then grew into a role as our sales manager. And it was shortly after that that um, we sort of embarked on the process to becoming owners in the business. And then in January of 2024, we executed a transaction for Justin Lex. He's my majority business partner. He and I took over as the majority leaders, and Dave Thompson, who was the previous CEO, previous majority owner, he's still our minority partner, but he saw an opportunity to execute a transition with Justin and I as two tenured employees who, really believed in the business and who went through a lot in the cultural shift and the transformation that we've undergone. Um, and so, yeah, it's been quite an incredible journey. And so now being in the CEO chair here for a couple years, and I love it.
That's awesome. So, for people who aren't familiar with what you do, give an overview of what SPS does.
Our vision is to make it easy for people to have a private paradise in their backyard. And that is the reason I get out of bed and do what I do every single day. Is I believe in that vision. I love that vision. I can sit here confidently and tell you the vast majority of our team lives out that vision every single day. I would never be naive enough to say that everybody lives it. 100% buy-in. But we're darn close. I really do feel that is the guiding principle. And so in making it easy for our clients to have paradise, that manifests itself in a lot of different ways. We're probably most famous for building custom in-ground pools. That's what people know us for. But we provide a turnkey experience in building pools, doing the landscaping, doing really incredible things with building pergolas and kitchens and fireplaces and pool houses. And I mean, we do awesome stuff. The stuff you see on like the pool TV shows, that's pretty much what we do. And so then we also provide hot tubs. We are also very well known as a high-end service provider. Our customers who do business with us would tell you we are one of the absolute best companies that they do business with, because we do what we say, we communicate very well. That's pretty much it. Like, if you do those two things, you're doing pretty well in most arenas. And then we provide remodeling, renovations of pools. We have a beautiful retail showroom where people can come and buy their products and support supplies. So, that pretty much summarizes most of what we do. Oh, and Christmas decorating. We do that too for a few months, and the guys really enjoy that as well.
It's a nice break from digging.
Yes.
Yeah, it's good. I think when someone would think about the kind of company that has complexity, like what you just described is complex, right? There's lots of moving pieces, lots of different required skill sets on the team.
Yes.
And it's not like so when you say turnkey, that means a lot more than a turnkey with like, delivering a vehicle. Like there's a transaction with the bank and whatever, but for pool services, there's a lot more that goes into that. And I would assume that's a little bit where you kind of had to develop what you called the 7 C's of your culture. Is that it?
We just call them our 7 core values.
Okay. Why don't you walk me through how that came to be?
Certainly. So it was right about the time I got promoted to retail manager. And so this was like late 2013, early 2014. I was just a couple years into the business. And at that time, we had about 30 team members, and we pretty much did all the things we do now. We just did it on a smaller scale because we weren't as big. And even I still remember at that point in time looking at how we function as an organization, and I thought, how has this company been in business for 40 some years? Because it was chaos. It was the wild, wild west, as I'm very fond of saying. It was every man for himself. Every department was a silo. You had this department was smarter than this department, and these guys hated everybody else, and these were the only people who knew anything about building pools. And it was incredible to me. And I was young, and I hadn't really worked. I mean, I worked at a few places, but I just thought, like, is this how businesses run? This is just so just dysfunctional and strange. So I give all the credit to Dave Thompson, because Dave decided that we were going to get together with a business coach. We were going to form a leadership team, which in the early days there was 10 of us on our leadership team, which was way too many people. But Dave, to his credit, he wanted to give everybody a voice or an opportunity to contribute to what he saw a vision to build. And so in forming this leadership team, Dave said, this is our vision, this is our mission, and let's figure out together what our points of culture are going to be. But those points of culture, those are going to be the rules of the game. This is how everybody on the team is going to treat one another. This is how we're going to treat clients. This is how we're going to treat our vendors. And we expect that to be reciprocated. And anybody who's not able to live in accordance with this culture and these 7 core values, you're going to have to find a different place to work. And so Dave did this, and Justin and I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, Dave, you are out of your mind. Like, this is never going to work. You don't even know who you're talking. These people aren't going to work together. Are you crazy? Like, this sounds great in like a fairy tale. This is in the real world. This is never, ever going to work. But Justin and I were really the first, it took a few months, I'm sure, but we were the first ones to kind of get on board and say, okay, actually, it might be nice to work for a company that lives this way. And then over the next 4 years, slowly but surely, we started to see some of the wrong people got off the bus really quickly. We had a few people who had been here for a while, years, who said, I'm going to go do something else. This just doesn't fit with how I operate as a person. So those people left. And then we started to add some team members who sort of fit, the culture we were trying to build. But I would say the turning point in where it became real, and I think any person can relate to this example, Jonathan. Everybody's worked at a company where there's a person who's been at the company for 30 years. And this is the guy or gal who knows everything.
Mm-hmm.
They're the most valuable person on the team.
Yeah.
And they're untouchable. They can do whatever they want because they've been here forever. They're always going to be here. That person is very safe no matter what they do. Well, Dave went to that person on our team who was the biggest violator of our culture. I mean, this person quickly exited the leadership team. Obviously, they had a seat at the table, and then they said, I don't want to be a part of this. This is dumb. I don't believe in this. This is not what I signed up for. So this person gave up their seat at the table, essentially said, even though they're the most influential person in the company, like, everybody respected them, despite the fact that they were the furthest thing from living up to our core values. Dave went to that person and he said, you have been unhappy here for a very long time, and I'm unhappy too. Why don't you go find something that makes you happy? And in Dave having the courage to do that, and I'm going to add a little bit more context. This person's stepson, his biological son, and his best friend all worked here. So we knew what was going to happen to all those people. And with the departure of that group, that represented about 40% of the company's revenue. So if you go to most business owners and say, hey, get rid of the toxic people on your team, you might have to give up 40% of your revenue to do it, though. Most people don't have the courage because it's hard. It's hard as then what am I going to do? And what we ended up doing is finding a bunch of people with good attitudes who showed up every day with a good attitude, who didn't know anything about pools. And as you can imagine, we made every mistake in the world. We lost tons of money. It was a train wreck that first year. It was probably the hardest year of my career. Was the first year after Dave did that. But in the second year, most of those guys came back. We still made a lot of mistakes, but less. We weren't repeating mistakes, at least. And we went from losing a bunch of money to breaking even. And then the third year is when we finally hit our stride. These guys had some experience under their belts. We had good systems developed. They stopped making mistakes because they knew what they were doing, and we knew how to better equip them. And it's just been an absolute blast ever since. And as time has gone on and we've had to part ways with other team members, I mean, we've had guys who have been here for 10, 15 plus years who, for varying reasons, we've had to say, yeah, at one point in time, there were things that we might have tolerated. There were things that might have just been brushed under the rug, but those days are gone. You can either live to the standard for our core values that everybody on this team lives to, or find somewhere else to work. And now where it's brought us to today is we are very, very slow to hire. We really take our time. I mean, shoot, we had a job posted here 2 months ago. We had over 300 applicants. Our HR manager interviewed probably about 24 of those folks. And I interviewed only 5 of them based on one question she asked that quickly told us if they were going to align with our culture or not. And we ended up hiring a candidate who I think is going to do a great job for us. But so those core values, they are everything to us. And a person who cannot live up to them can't work here.
I think there's a really good point you make about the courage required to live this way. I think there's a lot of people who, with good intentions, they craft these values statements, these definitions of a good employee. It gets put into a handbook of some kind, but then that's all that happens, right? Where they go through the process once, and then they expect everyone to be that way without teaching to those values. So how have you guys found success in not just expecting the values, but teaching them with those folks that come in with maybe, half of them? Like you've got the right attitude, you've got the right foundation, but you got to teach them along the way.
Yeah. And so it really, I don't want to oversimplify it, Jonathan, but it really comes down to living it every single day. Every person on this team from the top down is expected to conduct themselves in a way that aligns with our core values, and there are no exceptions. And so the example I always give for new team members is I'll say, everybody's worked at a company where they talk about culture, they talk about core values, and what that really means is it's hanging up on a poster somewhere on a wall, and they maybe talk about it at the Christmas party. And that's the extent of culture in a lot of organizations. Whereas in our company, every team meeting that we have, somebody is reading off at least a core value, and ideally giving an example where they've seen it lived out recently. When we do our company-wide meetings, we go through and we just pass around the sheet. People are taking turns reading the vision, mission, and each of the core values, and everyone who reads is giving an example of whichever core value they read. When we do our performance reviews, the bulk of it is spent on 2 things. One is we have the team member fill out a personal goals sheet, because I'm much more interested in hearing about the goals that my team members have and figuring out how I can help them work toward those personal goals, not professional. I'm not really that interested. People say, oh, I want to be a supervisor or a manager or this. Absolutely. I want to pour into my team, invest in my team, help them achieve those things. But I'm more interested in the why. Like, why do you want to be a manager? Are you trying to buy a house, start a family, buy a car? Those are the things that I want to help people work toward, is that personal fulfillment. And then the second component when we do our reviews is each of the core values, we're giving team members a rating. And it's one of 3 ratings. It's either a plus, meaning you're always exceeding this core value, a plus minus, which is for the most part, but maybe some room for growth, or a minus. And a minus would essentially mean we're putting a PIP in place. You've got 30 or 60 days for us to figure out how to make this better, or we're having a different conversation. And so in all those ways, and then the other way where we do our recognition for team members is at our quarterly safety meetings, which is the whole company. We ask each team member to nominate someone for team member of the quarter. So it's entirely, it's not really up to like the managers or the leadership team. Every single person on the team gets a vote, and we just tally the votes. Most votes wins. And the requirement is a name of a team member and an example of a core value that person exemplifies. And so then when we read off the nomination for the winner, we're citing which core values and whatever examples we were provided with. So we live it every day. We don't tolerate bad behavior if it won't be corrected by falling in line with the culture.
I think what you said is really important to underscore. The promoting of the values being lived out appropriately probably does more to inhibit the atrophy of those values than if you were to be out there policing those values, right? So when another team member says, hey, I saw this person doing it and that was really awesome, that actually inspires adherence to those values in a much deeper level than one of those managers out with a spyglass, saying, where are you messing up every day? Like, because no one likes to be caught, right? But everyone likes to be praised. And it's not like that's not why those employees are doing the right thing. But when you know that that's a part of the gig, that on a regular routine, we're going to call things out, you start to look for ways that other people are doing it. And then you start to bring those patterns of the other employee into your own professional experience. And that is a really strong way of reinforcing those values. Are there any policies or anything that at the bigger level that you as a leadership team have done to reinforce those values that might be, different than another kind of company?
No, I wouldn't say there's anything, certainly nothing specific to the pool industry. I think it is really just, it starts from the top and it works its way down. And so as team members, some of them have been here long enough to see an actual shift in, myself and in other members of our leadership team where, we used to talk like this, or we used to behave like this, and now we don't anymore. And I think just seeing us living out, the example and living out the standard that we're asking to be met. I'll give you an example of a failure on my part. So this was shortly after I became CEO about 2 years ago. I had a member of our leadership team call me out on certain comments that I was making. I tend to be a very outspoken guy about certain beliefs and opinions that I have. And I had a team member challenge me on, hey, does this still align with our standard for communication? Does this align with our standard for, excellence and pointing to some of our core values? And I'm like, yeah, you know what? I probably need to check myself a little bit. Especially now being a majority owner, being the CEO, there's things, as an employee, you might be able to just make comments here and there and it, slips unnoticed. But now if it's coming from the big chair, it probably carries a different weight. So I had to get up before half of my team and apologize for some comments that I had made and say, you know what, I should be better. We all need to be better, and this is no longer going to be tolerated. So even though you've heard me making comments like this in the past, it ends here. You're never going to hear it again. And my expectation is that going forward, none of us are going to talk like this. And that was a very difficult and a very humbling thing to do. But it also aligns with how we operate. So, and it also reinforced that nobody is above these standards.
Absolutely. Because when the boss admits failure and says, hey, I put myself on a performance plan, I've got to improve on something that we've decided as a leadership team, that gives it gives anyone in the team the permission to be okay with failure, in the sense that I'm now going to turn myself around, right? Not okay with failure as in I'm going to stay there, but I can self-diagnose, I can self-identify that I need to actually improve. And if the boss can do it, I can do it. There's many a company who don't get the kind of culture that they want because the top brass aren't willing to change. And you underscore that leadership strength by doing that. I was reading an article that talked about your short weeks comparatively, to the other construction companies in the industry, not just in the pool services, but other construction companies are notorious for long hours, long weeks. Talk to me a little bit about your 40-hour week.
Yeah, it's huge, and we just implemented some new enhancements to further impress upon our team balance. So balance is one of our 7 core values. It has often been the one we've struggled with the most because we're a seasonal business, because just so many reasons why balance is tough in the swimming pool industry, and it does ebb and flow throughout the year, but looking back at when Justin and I were cutting our teeth in this business, and he and I would routinely work 70, 80-hour weeks, and that's just what we did. And that is just how we thought it was always going to be. And then as time has gone on, and he and I, as business owners, we're trying to have better work-life balance, and we want the same for our team. I have a guy who worked 90 hours last week. I love him. Like, I appreciate him for it. I appreciate his willingness, but I don't want that for him. And he knows that. And I continue to impress that upon him. Like, dude, what are you doing for 90 hours? And why are you at a client's house until 11:30 p.m.? We work outside in Wisconsin. There's just so many things wrong with that. And again, he is a well-intentioned, he's a wonderful person. But I'm like, dude, this is not sustainable. You're going to be burnt out. Your wife probably hates you. Like, what are you doing? So, and one of the things we just implemented trying to curb this is performance-based pay. And the way we set up the performance-based pay is that for some of our team members, we're essentially doing revenue sharing, where they get a percentage of the revenue that they generate in a month. And there's only 2 caveats. One is that their billable time has to reach a certain threshold, because that's sort of an area we've seen for improvement the last couple of years is, gosh, too much time stopping at Quick Trip in the morning, too much time just not being productive. So billable time is a metric. And then the second piece is, if their billable time is not at a certain level, we are subtracting their overtime wages from that incentive. So for my guy who worked 90 hours last week, if I'm a betting man, I know that human efficiency decreases significantly as you get worn down and tired. I'll be really, really surprised if his billable percentage is where we want to see it for last week. And that's something we'll show to him, is like, dude, whatever earnings you accrued in overtime, you probably could have just made all that in your performance incentive and spend a lot more time doing things you want to be doing. So, so we look at all that, other changes we've made during COVID. I made the choice to close our store on Sunday. Sunday is an important day where I want to be with my family. I want my team to be with their families, and having at least a day every week where they can, know that they've got some reprieve. And then we cut our store hours so we're not open as late. With our construction and landscape teams, they're Monday through Friday. Some of those guys, they're just workhorses. I mean, they want to work 12-hour days. So I understand. I don't make too big of a fuss about it, but we're also very cognizant of having those conversations like, dude, take a day off when you need to, take a vacation. I talk to other people in the construction industry, and you probably encounter this too, Jonathan, where, oh no, during our peak season, you can't go on vacation. We got to make hay while the sun's shining. There's no time to take off for weddings or whatever you have going on. But we try really, really hard to say yes to every single vacation request. I'd be hard pressed to tell you the last time we said no to one, because it just doesn't happen usually. So I could go on and on about this, Jonathan, but the summary is work-life balance is so crucial. We live it. We encourage our team to live it. And when I've got stinkers who are burning the midnight oil, literally, I'm like, man, you gotta rein that in.
Yeah, well, it's crazy. I mean, I think one of the fallacies of work for people who enjoy working hard is that the longer I work, the better things will be. And it's easy to fall into that trap because to a certain degree that is true. Like you said, you have a minimum viable amount of projects that need to be accomplished, and we have to count that by hours, right? So we to a certain degree have learned through our life, through our personal work, whatever, even just like working around the house or having relationships, that you have to put in enough time and effort to be at a certain point that's acceptable. But where most people aren't able to turn around the corner is, well, now that I'm here, the difference between here and here is not effort or time. It's like excellence in the effort, right? So like you said, you have diminishing returns at a certain point in the evening because you're tired and you start to make mistakes. And then what was just, like, oh, I'll come back and I'll finish it for an hour and a half tomorrow morning becomes, oh, I now have to completely redo this project because I severely messed it up. So now your margins are hurt. The customer experience is less, less excellent that we want it to be. And ultimately it's really damaging to the team morale. There's a study out that says if you ever have to redo a project at a high end rate, so if you're like, for the kind of work that you guys do, so you're making paradise in someone's backyard. I love the way that you framed that. When someone has to go back and redo paradise, it feels less like paradise. And the idea of getting it done right slowly actually builds company morale and pride in the kind of work that you're doing. But when we have to undo something that we've done, it undermines it. So I think that's a really valuable, way that you've decided to work as a company. So balance is one of those core values. What are some of the other ones that you think are foundational to what you guys do as a team?
Well, I mean, our first core value is customer satisfaction, and that's at the center of everything we do. And so I'll give you an example from the comment you just made about having to redo paradise, because one of my favorite quotes that a client has ever said, and this is in the framework of the fact that we are not a cost leader in what we do. We are not even the middle guy. We tend to be the most expensive provider. Usually there's a significant gap, and we show people why. We show people there's a reason why we're more expensive than the other solutions, and we also have a longer backlog in a lot of cases. So people are willing to wait longer and pay more because they know that the quality of that, that experience and the lifetime of value and memories that they're going to get out of these personal resorts we build, that cost is not going to matter a whole lot in the big picture. But a client so eloquently phrased it. He said, the only thing worse than paying too much is paying for it a second time. And we tend to be the receiver of the call the second time. And we do it. I mean, we rip pools out of the ground and rebuild them. We do major six-figure restorations to existing pools. And sometimes if it's a pool that we built 50 years ago, yeah, that's going to happen.
Yeah.
We sometimes see it on pools that are not nearly that old, and that's frustrating. But so customer satisfaction, um, we had an instance where a mason made a colossal mistake in pouring about 4,000 square feet of concrete. And well, if you need context for how big of concrete that is, like look at the footprint of most houses. Like
Yeah. Right.
4,000 square feet of concrete is a lot. This was a massive, massive patio. Mason screwed the whole thing up, and we were going back and forth on like different solutions and how we were gonna take care of our client. And really we were initially looking at it as how are we gonna do this for as little money as it's gonna cost us to fix this problem. And we ultimately just finally sat down with Justin, and I'm like, dude, we need to stop focusing on the money component and just focus on what is going to be the right solution for the client. And so let's put ourselves in his shoes. What would we want? And what we quickly aligned on is we're not going to let the mason do it again because he already goofed this up once. So he can't be a part of it. So in order for us to make sure we deliver the experience we want, we need to be in control, which means our guys, we are ripping this 4,000 square feet out, and we are replacing it at our own cost with a different material. And the client had a very robust construction background, so he knew that what we did represented it didn't cost us six figures, but it would have cost him more than six figures, and it cost us a lot. And it just again came back to, this is the right way to handle this based on wanting to do right by the client and wanting to be in control of that solution and not being beholden to anyone else. So, when we talk about the phrase, put your money where your mouth is, I've done it. Like, I have put my money, we didn't make a penny on that job. We lost our shorts on that job, and I would do it again. And that client knows that we did the right thing. He is you think he's ever going to call anybody else?
No.
Who is he going to refer whenever he talks to somebody who's thinking about a backyard paradise? Like, so customer satisfaction is another big one. But I would say where we have continuous room for growth, and what I see most companies struggle with, is communication. Communication is everything, and we are far from perfect, but we are pretty darn good. And I will put us up against any company in any industry. Pools aside, we could go into anything else, and we just communicate at a level that you don't see, because we do things like just call people back, for one, which I can't tell you the amount of times, Jonathan, somebody will say, wow, you're the fourth pool company I've called, and nobody else calls me back, or nobody else even answers the phone. I'm like, well, thank you. We do. But, whether it's via phone or via email, or especially it's 2026, last time I checked, via text message, a lot of our clients rave and appreciate the fact that we text, and they can text my office. Every single person on my team can see that text, respond to that text, assign it to the right person, because usually for a specific person. And then we can even add notes in the background of like how to troubleshoot or how to best help this person. So, again, we've made enormous strides when we look at the surveys that we'll send out to clients that we've done work for, and we ask them to rate us. And again, communication will always have room for growth, but our scores for communication have just gone up and up and up over the years. And we've made that a constant focus, and we've invested a lot in tools to do that well.
I think that's really important that you invested the tools. That's a good way of saying it too, because you can say we're going to change our behavior on something, but if you don't give people the ability to change their behavior, then it's a ridiculous thing to try to support or to improve on. And that that is the cost that I think a lot of companies aren't willing to pay, right? And so what happens is they suffer on the back end, and then they get mad at their employees for not having good communication. But in reality, that's a leadership team problem. That's a structures issue. That is an operations challenge that you could have prevented by investing on the front end. But how many times have you won a client just because you called them back? How many times have you won, you have kept someone's work because you communicated in a format that made sense for them? That's the kind of thing that keeps you on the table, as opposed to, you're going to make a lot of money, as opposed to like going out and having, everyone doing business the way that you want to. That only works until people are upset with your way. If you can prove to me that there's a way of having a business your way as the company owner, and only finding people who like to do business your way, you'll make a lot of money, because none of the rest of us know how to do that. We have to do business the way that our customers need it to be done. And that's the kind thing to do anyway. That's just, we might call it like good sense. It's just good sense business. But in 2026, we have to articulate, what does good sense business mean? So I love that. And I love the illustration too, because if you can point to where the customer service comes out, and you can point to where the communication comes out, you can point to where balance comes out in your culture, that means you're not just teaching, you're also living. And I was reading a book this week on leadership, and they say one of the essential tasks of the leader is not to tell, it's to show how things ought to be done. And I think what you've illustrated with some of these stories is that they're not just fun stories to tell, even though sometimes it's like, I can see how that would be a great story to tell. Oh yeah, we had to rip out 4,000 square foot of concrete. That ends up getting a good laugh at some point with someone, but that's not the point of the story. The story is, and this is why we did that, right? And that's the kind of story that you tell and retell within the company to reinforce the value. I think the world of what you're doing. I think you're absolutely right. There's a lot of companies out there that have this stuff wrong. And it's encouraging to me to hear someone say, yeah, we're not going the opposite direction with this. We're all in, and our team knows it. That's how we hire. That's just really encouraging for me, from my vantage point, because I'm out here trying to serve companies who want to make a difference with their company. And you can do that to a certain degree, doing things your way. But the way that we define legacy leadership with my company is, that's making sure that the team knows what's going on and is benefited with the company. The families of the team like what's going on with the company, and ultimately the community around that business is being improved and impacted because of the values that are being lived out in the company. To me, that's a legacy business. We can talk about businesses that have been around for a long time, but what's the impact on that community? That's where we're headed with legacy business. So I appreciate you coming on today to talk a little bit about that with your work. I always enjoy hearing a practitioner explain what it means to live out their core values. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Jonathan. Appreciate it.